Good morning, Steve. How are you? Do we have everything working right?
I think we do.
Yep, this would be a first.
Good to see you, Dan.
Good to see you. How well let's jump right into $7,109.
The Kickstarter for Intoximancy. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be more pro about this for people who don't know who I am. My name is Steve Conley. I'm a web cartoonist. I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age, which is free to read online. The recently Ringo nominated Middle Age, which is free to read online on Webtoons, Tapas, and Go Comics, and on my own website, middleagecomic.com. And I'm running a Kickstarter right now for Intoximancy. But jumping back, Dan, who the hell are you?
I ask myself that every morning when I wake up. I am Dan Taylor. I am a dungeon master, I guess, for Catacombs and Comedians, the live actual play Dungeons and Dragons show performed at comedy clubs throughout the South. That is, if you make Nashville and Huntsville throughout. And I, create Dungeons and Dragons and role playing game content. And back in the day, Steve and I know each other from our work together on the Star Trek comic book for IDW. He was the artist, I was the editor. So we both checked off something off our bucket list on Star Trek, working on Star Trek, I assume.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So let's
so
just.
the Kickstarter is going great. It's going great. It has 4 days left to go. It is at, like you said, I must have just gotten another backer recently. 7109. It's been very volatile, lots of ups and downs, like the recently cancellations, adjustments, things like that. Again, it's got so many more backers that I'm used to, and so many more backers that I'm not of whom I'm not familiar, like names I don't know. At this point, when I'm doing my Kickstarters for my comic book, I kind of know. I'll see a name and I'll be like, I see Dan is back to you. I'm like, okay, I have pretty good guess which Dan that is. It's not like a huge audience. It's not like thousands and thousands of people. This time, it's names I don't know. And so there's been volatility. And so last night we crept above 7,000, and then we dropped below 7,000. And so it's a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So we are making progress, but it's weird. So I have to unlock a new stretch goal, and I created the artwork for the 8K stretch goal in case we do it. We're going to do a coaster, drinking coaster, with Intoximancy's typography on it and some fun text and a nice design. And so I'll share that today.
In case you do it, because I saw when I was getting ready for the show, I wanted to bring up your Kickstarter just for reference, and it was at 700 or 7,005. So this morning alone, you've gotten $104.
Crazy,
And
crazy.
I mean, I'm talking like within the last half hour.
Well, it could go down again in that time. So
Yes,
I mean,
I won't feel guilty now for lowering my pledge now that I know you're.
Yeah, there's no on-screen graphic that doesn't pop up when someone cancels or lowers the pledge. It's just when they add one. So you only get the bad news when you check the dashboard or the tally, or if you have that number in your head, you're like, I know my number, and then you go there and you're like, the number's lower. Why is the number lower?
But now you have to unlock more monsters.
Mm-hmm.
What are these monsters going to be? Do we know, or is it a surprise? Have you not
I
figured it out yet?
I'm not certain. I think they're going to be all the monsters so far have been based on like kind of puns off of drinking vessels. Like one is a hobgoblet. One is a tankard, which is more like it's like a little tank. I did add a new thing. I was finishing up the character sheets or the monster sheets for them, and I realized that the tankard and the Brokenstein's monster, they both look like mugs with handles on them, and so now I've added disadvantage to grappling. So they're easy to grapple, and they have disadvantage when they don't want to be grappled, and when they are grappled, they are restrained. So normally in D&D, when you're grappled, you're not necessarily restrained, but now they are. Yeah, exactly. So anything with a handle now has the easily handled feature, and so I don't mind having the lower CR rating if they're easy to restrain like that.
So is it going to have a drinking vessel theme? All these monsters? Are you gonna?
So far, the first 4 do. There's like a great red. I originally was calling it a pseudo flagon. They're all flagon born, all these creatures. And I thought one was going to be a pseudo flagon, but it was basically a dragon, fire breathing thing. I don't think pseudo flagon makes any sense. So I'm thinking about right now, it's a great red flagon. And it's not great. It's really tiny, but I mean, it looks great. It thinks it's great. It's very arrogant, but it's just a fire breathing mug that flies around and breathes fire on the poor players. But I don't know if the new ones will. If they do, there's one I was thinking of having one called a snifter, just because it's a funny name. It's a funny name. It's evocative. You immediately start picturing something like a Jimmy Durante. You know, this chat is for the young, so I'm going to make a Jimmy Durante reference.
I get it.
You have a Emmett Kelly reference that you make, and I'm like that's for us. That's for the 45 plus crowd.
Yeah, none of my players caught that, I don't think.
No. But I could tell you were like, should I use that reference? Are they even understand it? Is there anyone in this audience with any whiskers? There's the Tumblr might be another one. It's just, again, there's just obvious drink ones, but I also might want to do some that are just a little different, so it's not all the same shtick.
All right, because I was going to suggest pink elephants.
There's a spell. There's a spell that basically it's like a summon animals kind of conjure animals kind of thing, but it's I want it to be very weak. The latest thing I've been doing is I've been tweaking the stats for the subclass, and I'm very interested in the level 14 arcane tradition of the Intoximancer, because it's a subclass, so the where they unlock certain arcane traditions is fixed based on SRD. And I'm trying to limit myself to that so they don't become overpowered. I would love to give this class everything, and they get a new car, and they get I would love to give them everything. But the arcane tradition at level 14, I think, is going to be fun because it's going to be a mixed bag, where when you're sober, you have advantage on concentration checks and maybe dexterity saving throws. But when you're drinking, you have different advantages. So I think that's a very fun. I don't know of a subclass feature like that. I mean, there's some, like, I know there's a rogue ability that if you remain motionless, it triggers advantage on the next attack. Like if you spend one round not moving, you can have advantage on the next attack. It feels like that sort of thing where it'd be hard to game out. Like I have to start drinking now if I want to have this advantage. But it's fun that it's level 14. Most players will never see it. So.
Right. Well, now I'm trying to think of glasses. I mean, can you do some of the shot glass? Tumbler works.
Yeah, maybe. There were. I had a whole list of ones. I ended up going with the Hobgoblet. I think the Hobgoblet was the first one, and it was so dumb that I thought, okay, I got to do a bunch of it.
It's a great pun.
Yeah, and easy to get, easy to understand. People don't quite, and I'm pretty sure there wasn't one already. That's a big thing too. Doing anything in the homebrew space is like there's a million people creating things right now, and you don't want to step on their toes.
Okay, instead of how about play on words with bugbear and do the mugbear?
That's good. I think about there was a little hunchman called Mugs, but Mugbear's cute. I like that.
Yeah. Okay. My work here is done. All right. So yeah, 7,100. And let's see, unless it's gone up. No, 7,109. I think. I doubt you'll have, $6,100 worth of cancellations. So I think you're safe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I think I knew last week that we probably hit 8. I think I felt like the momentum was enough, and there's enough people who are watching the campaign, which I haven't had this many people watching. I think we're at 300 and something people watching the campaign, which is remarkable. And 40 of them have bit the bullet, I think 40 or 50. So I think in the last 48 hours of this campaign, it's going to be solid. And I thought it was going to be happening during when I usually play D&D on Thursday nights, but our game was postponed or rescheduled. So I'll live stream here on Twitch when it ends.
All right. So we've got the coaster at 8,000, and then you're teasing another locked stretch goal after that.
I am vamping until I can come up with one.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that curl because it was the sort of thing where I had it at the beginning because I thought we're not going to hit 4. We're not going to hit 5. So let me just cover it up. And because if I had shown this laundry list of stuff we're never going to get, it would just be disheartening. So, because if I had put if I put $9,000 or $10,000 worth of items, also, it was also the nice thing about that curl covering the graphic was that, let's say on day 2, we had hit 4,000. Suddenly I wouldn't have made them every one. I would have made it every 2. It gives me a chance to mess around with the math and scale things differently. So if we suddenly get a huge burst of energy, the tiers could have changed from every 2 to every 4 to every 4 from every 5 or something like that.
No, I love that curl and that hidden. You know, if I ever do a Kickstarter, I'm going to steal this as well. And just with that many stretch goals, but that many stretch goals is so much work. But you thrive in that sort of thing, so
it was something I think I heard Dave Kellett say, who does Sheldon and the Drive webcomic. He had said that what he made his stretch goals were things that he wanted the project to have to begin with. It's almost like saying, okay, if we hit our goal of 1,000, will this project's a go. If we hit 1,500, the book will have a spine. You know, we'll staple the covers on. It's almost like you're baking in the basic features. And so the idea that it's got like a spot varnish or thicker paper, that's stuff I'd really want. In the end, I kept those out because they did raise the price of the book. And if we didn't hit those goals, I really wanted to cut the costs. So it ended up being a lot of the stuff that the improvements to the product were all stuff that I wanted to bake in at the base level, but I just, couldn't afford it.
And I like how you separate, like it's a deluxe paper, then it's more content, and then it's the deluxe cover, then it's a sticker. It's
right.
More. It's not because if I was going, oh, this guy wants me to pay more just to unlock deluxe paper, and then followed with a deluxe cover, and then followed with a ribbon bookmark, I'm like, that stuff doesn't matter to me that much. So,
whereas the content feels like it's the easiest part to me because it's like, sure, it's going to add pages, but that increases the cost of production, but it's almost like a no-brainer. Adding, it's not like adding page numbers. It's work, but it's
you just gave it away. $10,000. You're going to unlock page numbers.
Pages will be sequentially ordered. New rectangular shaped book.
Oh yeah, I want to see a round one, a round book.
The book will be flammable if we can unlock 12.
It'll be in English.
Perfect. Staples will be made of metal instead of, just don't say what they would have been otherwise. Yeah. But just.
All right. Okay. I know what I'm doing for my next zine quest now. We got all sorts of fun stuff.
Well, you can unlock tattoos. You're braver than I am. You get the tattoos.
Yeah, that's my new tattoo right here.
Saw that.
I just got that last weekend to celebrate 10 years of sobriety.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah. And it was a great, because it was, because I wanted to get it last weekend, this tattoo. And I looked on Google and I found a local tattoo place. And this is artistic involved, so it's creativity. Hold on. I'm not just bragging about tattoos. And I went to the shop Saturday morning. They opened at noon. I was first one there. And, I'm a walk-in. And the guy running, there's a guy that, I don't know how familiar you are with tattoo shops. But it's always the same type of thing. There's one guy who runs it who really doesn't do tattoos. But, he collects the chair rental from all the artists. Just like, it's just like a salon type thing.
Yeah.
So I said, look, and I just showed on my phone, I had these little tally marks, 10 tally marks. And I go, this is what I want. And he goes, okay, well, my walk-in artist isn't here. Hang out and wait. But there was already another artist who was there, and she was very helpful. Her first name's Ina, and she's from Sweden, I believe. Cool, very artistic types. I'm totally getting my vibe, blonde dreads, just the whole 9 yards. And so she started helping me out. And, you got to fill out, they have like a iPad to fill out all the paperwork and proof your ID and all this sort of stuff. And she asked what I wanted. And I just showed her, the tally marks. And she goes, oh, that's my appointment's not going to be in. Let me go. I'll take care of that for you. So I'm like, great. And then everybody's who's coming in after me saying, this is the work and all the detailed work that I want. The other artist and the guy running the shop, they're pointing to Ina saying, This is your girl. You want her to do it. Well, so this is who I got doing 10 tally marks on my wrist. Great. And she's like, all right, do you want these exact tally marks on the reference I showed her, or should I just freehand it? And I'm like, freehand it. I want to be as easy as I can for you. You know, you're taking me in. And so I sit down, she does it. Beautiful freehand work. I mean, as far as 10 tally marks go. And at the end, and that's a very painful spot to get tattoos, I discovered. And at the end, Jesus. I go, how much do I owe you? Or what's the damage? And she's like, my gift to you. Congratulations on 10 years of sobriety. Just a tip. So I tipped her cash. And I said, I promise I will come back and get a real tattoo from you. So, because I plan on getting a Dungeons and Dragons ampersand on this side. Where
that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Where's my? I got an art. There you go. Next below that one there. So yeah. I mean, because otherwise it would have cost $100. That's their minimum.
Right.
And I was willing to pay that. You know.
Right, you went in there thinking that's what you're going to pay.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to sit down. Sure.
Yeah. So, and it took her 5 minutes.
That's great.
I just said, I'm just your warm up. And she's like, exactly. Zip, 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 zip. But no. So yeah, now I want to go back to her and give her as much business. So if you're ever in the Mount Juliet suburb of Nashville area, go to Division Street Tattoos.
I know where to go.
And she is wonderful. She has a long wait list. So book your appointment early, and she does beautiful work. But yeah, so that was a good moment. So of course I'm, it's been a good week. I mean, and then right before, what was that? That was the 20. Yeah. So the week before that, I had the Catacombs and Comedians show at Zany's, which we had a videographer finally do some good camera work on this.
Awesome.
And I do have it available for a very short run here on this Twitch channel. It's, it's on the videos thing, but it's only going to be up there for another 10 days maximum or something like that. Maybe even less. Because I'm offering it as content for the 0 level Patreon.
That's great.
Which it will always be there. That will be the one spot it will always be. So if somebody comes into Catacombs and Comedians a year down the line, they can go back into the Patreon and find it there. So, gotcha. But I don't know, because again, it's a live show and people pay money at the clubs to see it. So, eventually a year or two down the line, maybe I'll make it completely free for that content. But, I got to justify it some way by paying the videographer to do it. And that sort of work, even though I didn't pay him much for this, and he did it out of the generosity of his heart. And he was, his name's Remo, and I appreciate him so much. And he will be doing the next. So he will be doing the next show again here in Nashville. So.
Gotcha. And so folks can watch it here on this channel. I think if at the end of this video, it might just go into that, right?
Right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But yeah, it was. Now that I know that it's getting videotaped, I got to make sure I tuck my gut in, because I'm on a side. I'm on the side of the table.
Were you suddenly seeing yourself like, oh gosh, I gotta present myself?
Oh, look at that bald spot! I got to make sure my head's buzzed.
No cape. You don't need to.
Well, the Halloween show, I plan on doing some sort of costume.
Sweet.
That'll be October 24th here in Nashville, and I did a beautiful poster for it, which is already showing up in gaming shops here in the Nashville area.
Nicely done. Have you moved on to the production phase for your Kickstarter, or is there a way for people who, because we talked about mine, I want to make sure we talk about yours, that you just wrapped up the Oddity Off-Print #1.
No, not yet. There's been a lot of behind the scenes work on Catacombs and Comedians as far as the live show and getting the streaming show together. I've got, as of Tuesday, I think I interviewed my final player, another stand-up comic, because that's been the hard thing. It's easy to find players for a streaming, Dungeons and Dragons game. It's a little more difficult to find working stand-up comedians whose schedule allows
to
do it. So I can announce now that we will be streaming again here on this channel at Catacombs and Comedians, a regular streaming session, which will be more detailed and more involved than the stage shows, because we are able to do more here on the streaming than we can in the hour and a half on the stage. Got my 4 comedians, and it will be called Catacombs and Comedians, Wrath of the Aristocrats. And,
That's awesome.
And I'm making reference to the world's greatest, dirtiest joke, Aristocrats. Sure. So think of it as you will. That's what the next Catacombs and Comedians campaign will be. That's separate from the Zanies Nashville shows and separate from the Stand Up Live Huntsville shows. But they all tie in together somehow, some way. Just enough
like arrogant is like multiversal arrogant.
Yes, enough to give me a headache and try to figure it all out. And October 24th, we're calling that Halloween themed show the Side Splitting Spooktacular, and it will have it'll definitely have a. I just do this for the puns.
It's great,
and so it'll all have a horror theme involved, and I don't have the date nailed down for the Huntsville show, but we'll hopefully be doing it there as well. And so, yeah, it's Catacombs and Comedians. Just the production of that, the promotion of it is keeping me busy.
It's amazing. It's great. Congratulations.
Yeah, I do more on production and promotion and putting it all together than I do actually coming up with the adventure that we play at the table. Which probably
that was the Orson Welles line, right? He had access to the world's greatest model railroad. I heard him say model railroad once, and also heard him say greatest paint box ever. But he spent 90% of his time hustling.
Yeah,
and it definitely feels like that. Okay, yeah, it's a lot of. You have to do so much. There's so much prep work. Posters. I mean, people don't recognize how long. That's what 2 hours to design the thing, just to forget coming up with the name and the text that has to go on it, and
finding the perfect font.
Yeah, and then making sure the size is right, that it has a bleed, that it has all the silly stuff that people just see the final thing and go, okay, but all that. I mean, just a poster can take so long, let alone a 20-page book or a 100-page. I mean, we had the DC Bradshaw on. The idea that he had to do that 150-page. Little But Fierce. The idea that all the work involved in that, shocking amount of work.
Yeah, I probably wrestled with 2 hours alone on whether or not to have the QR code to buy tickets on the poster or not. Because I've done it before, and I don't know how much, like you would probably know. You keep records and you do the research on, well, I got 5 tickets sold by people using the QR code. I'm like, whatever. But I don't think it made, and at the end of it, it came down to me ditching the QR code because our little Catacombs and Comedians logo, the laughing rolling D20. I made a Halloween version where he's got fangs and little bat wings, so I wanted to put that on both sides instead. So yeah.
How do they sell tickets? Do they use a vendor?
They have you could either buy them at the box office. A walk up, or they on the various clubs' websites. You can purchase them there.
Gotcha. I wasn't sure if they used a third party service. Like then you could go in there and get yourself an affiliate code to get like a recommendation, like another, just a little bit more money, just to cover the printing costs of the posters.
Oh, that would be nice, but nah, they're not. They don't make things very easy because like on the calendar on the one club's website, it still shows on Monday the 24th, it still shows 2 events happening at 7 p.m. Mine and, New Material Monday, just because whoever does the programming forgot to take that one off, Right. And it's, I'm like, oh, you got to take that off. It's, but I'm like, I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad enough that I'm kind of taking my situation advantage. I'm not going to say advantage of, but I'm using my, what's the word? I'm using my privilege or my position of knowing who I know to be able to get my show in the club.
Right.
Yeah, so it
Well,
is.
yeah,
Yeah,
but the turnout is, but you're justifying your existence with the great turnout, right? I mean, like,
it's yeah. The last show, though, I will tell you, was our weakest turnout.
it's weird. I mean, do you? I wonder, because I think when you have a streaming show, it's easy to build an audience because you're building a narrative that people, if you're ending it on a cliffhanger, the way Matt Mercer usually does, like he almost always ends it on, and we're going to leave it there, and everyone at the table's like, Gah! you know, um, if you if you're ending on a cliffhanger, that'll bring people back. But if I don't know if a live experience would have that same.
Well, I left this next one on a definite cliffhanger.
Oh, I have to catch the ending of it.
Yeah, definitely. Things are falling into place, and you start to. I introduced one of the big bad guys at the end of this one,
Nice.
And it sets up nicely for the Halloween special. Because I'm gonna have Vincent Price and Kiss, and the whole.
That's great.
But yeah, because originally I was going to have my club players stream as well, and that like every other a show at the club, and then we do 2 streaming episodes and we're back at the club. But that just didn't work out schedule wise. I mean, I've had the original Catacombs and Comedians concept has morphed and changed immensely since I originally started. And that's just because I've, discovering comedian schedules, comedians' flakiness, comedians' willingness, time issues, things can go, like I remember when I wrote the first adventure for the first stage show, I had, this is how it's going to go. Well, it went off the wet rails way early.
Right.
So now I write a very loose outline and just go with that on, when I do the show. So the streaming show, Wrath of the Aristocrats, is going to give me much more. I'll be able to do much more background and world building and set that up. And hopefully that builds an audience that when people are like, oh, I'm going to be in Nashville, I'm going to go see the Catacombs and Comedians while I'm there.
Right.
And so
that's great. Great.
And 2 of the comedians who are going to be on the streaming are Nashville located. So I can do a crossover that way.
That's awesome.
And I wanted one comic from the Nashville show and one comic from the Huntsville show, just because I have some familiarity with those players already. And then there are 2 other comedians, another one from Nashville who's not part of the show, and then one from North Carolina. I'm not exactly sure what city she's in, but so I mean that's 4-hour drive. So who knows? That might I'm still keeping it all in the South.
Right. That's great. That's exciting. I can't wait. I'm also interested in seeing how you lay out the environment. Do you think you're going to use any kind of virtual tabletop in?
No, I just love theater of the mind play. So it's going to be very, it's going to look something similar to this with the cutouts of our talking heads, except I'll have 5 of them. And, there might be another window open for visual reference.
Right.
But now that I got this whole fancy streaming deck and know how to use it, I can just cut to a whole new screen altogether.
That's great.
So yeah, it's all been Catacombs and Comedians just lately. So yeah, as far as my next Kickstarter, nothing, not even close to getting that off the ground. I obviously did not make, we were talking about maybe getting another Zine Quest in, but that did not happen.
Yeah, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I'm not sure if there's time to I would think that if you launched it, you might get a little bit of play, but I think they're going to bury that hub as soon as the month ends. I haven't checked the website, and actually I think it was there for another day or so, but I imagine it's going to go away any minute. And so any benefit's going to fade.
Right. And I'm sure most people are just Zine Quest out at this point.
Yeah.
But I will start the next Zine Quest a lot earlier. I mean, because it's in February.
Right.
So, I mean, I'll start promoting the fuck out of that come January 1st, probably.
So have the page built and approved so you can start sharing the link beforehand. That's what I did with mine. Felt really good about it. I mean, I put a real bare bones campaign together, and I I had basically a graphic. I didn't have the cover yet. It was all just kind of like fakery, basically saying, here's my campaign, here's my tiers, here's my stuff, please approve me. And they approved me. And then I don't think any of those graphics survived to the final. I had different tiers, I had different everything. And it was just more like, approve this thing so I can share the link. Oh, and that was a tip I could share. When I had them approve it, I just called it Intoximancy. The title of the project was Intoximancy. So the URL is nice and short. Once they approve it, that locks the URL.
Aha.
And after it's approved, you can change the title. So the title didn't have to be Intoximancy, a boozy subclass, blah, 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 blah. So that was a little tip.
I like that. I'm going to definitely remember that.
Yeah, I think it was very helpful. It kept the URL nice and short, or short-ish. It's still going to be Kickstarter / blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, no, but that definitely, otherwise it would have been huge. No, that works quite well.
Yeah.
So what else? Anything else on your end?
Well, the campaign is going crazy. We get the Ringo nomination, so vote early and often, Mr. Comics Professional.
My votes are already in. I'm amazed they still consider me a professional.
I'm amazed they ever considered me a professional. I'm trying to think. I'm not trying to get ahead of myself. I have to do. Next Kickstarter I do is going to be for the collection of the Middle Age. It's going to be it's a graphic novel, not on the gaming side. I don't know how the gaming people will react to, hey, there's a Kickstarter about comics. It's probably similar to the way the comics people are reacting to a Kickstarter about gaming, where people write me saying, I don't play these games. I don't know what 5e is. That was the latest person I heard. Like, what is 5e? I don't know what it is. But that was meant to be a kind of a delimiter, like a not delimiter, but that was meant to corral people. Like, I say 5e because if you don't know what 5e is, you can't be interested in what I'm creating.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of like, I don't know. And I know they don't like us to use they don't like us to say Dungeons and Dragons. They want us to say, the world's
greatest role-playing game.
Yeah, or the world's oldest role-playing game, or the world's bestest, greatest of all times role-playing game. But I finished sculpting the mini, of the Intoximancer. The only thing I might add at the 10K, at the 9K mark, 10K, how dare I? At the 9K mark would be additional character sheets like NPCs. That was a thought I had. We were talking about the next Kickstarters for us, and I was thinking about it. Let me ask you about creating a standalone 5e supplement about NPC monsters. Creating one about monsters. I think items is always going to sell better than monsters, because monsters are for the DM, items are for everybody. So if you're going to do an oddity off print, maybe it's like or a spin-off or something like that. Maybe it's about the magic items. Also on Reddit, the magic items seem to get a much higher amount of likes and upvotes than the monsters do. I don't know why that is, but I think maybe it's because players don't care about monsters.
That makes sense, yeah.
And so if it's just for DMs, you're going to have a much smaller audience.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, and like it also makes sense to come up with a bard subclass of the comedian.
Right. Absolutely.
With various stuff like that. Yeah, that's definitely something.
Because a player is going to would want that subclass and will want to take that. I mean, I feel like the Intoximancy book is about a player who's going to get this thing and bring it to their DM and saying, this is what I want to play. And I think if you do a bard subclass comedian, that's what people want to,
Yeah. Yeah, and there's all sorts of, I could riff off all sorts, there's the prop comic, the observational comic,
Yeah, and this stuff, and it's your world, and it's like, and people are going to be seeing you at a comedy club. I feel like that's a real perfect melding of what you're doing, because you've hit on something so great that it's like, okay, let's plant the flag here. And let's this is where we're opening up our shop, and thank you all for being here. And
I've been very vocal about how I don't like bards in my games. So it would be good, the creating the stand-up comedian bard I did that. I will allow this into my game.
Uh-huh.
Even though
Is
they're
there a why don't you like bards? As someone who play, I have a level 12 bard, level 1 sorcerer.
Do you go into every tavern trying to seduce someone?
No.
Okay, that's what I don't like about bards.
Okay.
It's become such a. Here comes the tiefling bard and goes blah blah. And I know how play Dungeons and Dragons however you want, and the way you are playing it and having a good time is the correct way to play it. No but.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say but. I thought you were gonna say but.
But that's just not my game. So
Sure. Every once in a while, I see that role playing part of it. Like when someone's going to start, I want to seduce the barmaid, and you get into that kind of the Community episode where Jeff Winger says, "Ahmed, I want you to look at what you're doing right now." And he says, Jeff is a completely uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to role play like this. I don't want to have this is not the game I signed up for. I feel like that's the part where it gets into. But I don't know. I don't play the bard that way because he. I just don't think. Yeah, that's not his character. Also, he's very old. He's a half elf, so he's very old. So it's like I feel like there's often like a. I don't want to be a scoundrel or a bastard. I want to be a nice guy
or a pervert.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because the two element, and again, however you play Dungeons and Dragons and enjoy it and have fun is the correct way to play. You're doing it right.
Right.
On the other hand, two elements of kind of the Dungeons and Dragons game that I'm not a big fan of is hanging out in taverns, seducing people, and B, shopping.
Oh, okay. So I had a DM game for the first time in a long, long time, ages and ages. So I'm DMing this thing, and they're going into a town. I've mapped out the town, and I see I know the players hate they hate magic shops and they love magic shops. This is all they just think. Oh God, there's the next 3 hours of my life's going to go away. And so as they're entering into town, the first thing they see up on the right is is a big building labeled magic shop, and we're going to take our break. And they're both, I can just tell their stomachs are sinking. Like, are we going to spend, our characters are too low. We don't have any money. We're not going to enjoy ourselves. We're going to have to, what do you have in stock? And it's not, almost always it's handled really badly where the poor DM has to list stuff. It'd be good if you're at a table and they just say, here's our menu of items, peruse at your leisure. That's a different thing. But when you're streaming or you're doing it through Zoom and you've got a list and they have a +1, blah, blah, blah. And then what was that again? It's an awful thing. Or they've got like a ever smoking bottle and everyone's got to type in the ever smoking bottle. What the hell's an ever smoking bottle? It's a pain in the ass. So they see this building, they come back and say it's closed, out of business. I just wanted it to be that kind of heartbreaking, like, no, we're not gonna do that. I'm not gonna waste anybody's time with the shopping. It's awful.
Yeah, because it's always all right. You're going to set out on your quest tomorrow. What do you want to do in the meantime? Well, I'm going to go shopping, and can I have somebody add this to my armor? Just do that off game, You don't need to do that at the table. That's just, I just want to get onto the adventure and get going.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why you haven't seen any of that stuff happen in Catacombs and Comedians.
Oh,
Could
God,
you imagine the audience just sitting there while those four in particular at the Nashville show try to haggle? Well, they wouldn't bother haggling with the shop owner. Those people are bloodthirsty killers, and they would just kill the poor shopkeeper.
And it's also so terrible because it's like, especially when it's a magic shop, because it's like, wait a minute, you're supposed to go into dungeons and get your loot that way. It's not.
That's exactly how I feel.
A potion shop I'm kind of okay with. I feel like potion shops would be a thing. I don't, but the idea that
well, now that the potion of lesser healing is in the player's handbook for 50 gold pieces, yeah, I'm all for it. But, just don't walk into a shop saying, I'm looking for magical swords, No.
Right.
You can't buy those off the rack.
They have, there's a supplement right there. It's just the assortment of garbage items that the magic shop has. And it's just useless things, absolutely useless. The 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 mug of lukewarm liquid. And it's like it keeps whatever you want room temperature. Something stupid like, none of its attunement, or hell, all of its attunement. It's all incredibly useful, but you have to attune to it. Like really, really make it so stuff people don't want.
Like the brooch of fabric closing.
It's a button.
There you go.
That's good. That's good. The Scotch tape of mending.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Um,
Yeah. So the magic shop part is awful. But how do you handle when you're going to stream? Do you have?
And then hold on. And then of course, did you watch that Critical Role animated show on Amazon?
I did. Yeah.
They threw in both of the things I hate into one element: the seducing in the magic shop.
Come on. I think what's it? Why am I drawing blank? Glorious. Oh, I can't think his name. I can't think. I'm much more of a Mighty Nine Pumat Soul merchant guy. I can't think of his name
Right.
from season 1. But I don't mind that much, because I think Matt keeps people on their toes in a way. I never felt like, even the shopping part does get annoying, and you could tell there was a big Travis basically on Critical Role. It's just every time they enter a shop, he's just like, oh my god, kill me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I still feel like if anybody can handle it, they can. But it almost feels like it's a way, if you're a DM and you want to just kill the next hour, like, I haven't prepared anything. Okay, we're going into a magic shop. Like, ooh, all right.
Exactly. Talk about lazy DM. I wonder if Sly's done, Sly flourishes magic shops.
That's great.
But we were talking last week we were talking about my upcoming Wild Quest that I'm doing with Steve Musgrave, who will probably, since Steve Conley won't be with me next week, it'll be Steve Musgrave, my artist who's done all the monster design work for Catacombs and Comedians. Well, he and I are working on
an infinitely better Steve, if I have to say.
Well, we'll find out. You're pretty high, because I mean, I have a brother named Steve. I've got you. I got Stephen Coughlin, who does artwork for Catacombs Comedians too. I got Steve Musgrave, and then so I'm gonna put Steve Austin, the $6 million man, up on top. Steve Austin, the wrestler, might be a little lower.
Sure. Sure.
Steven Spielberg is up there. It's a crowded field of Steves. But and my comic book Hero Happy Hour actually have a villain named Stevel, who's the evil Steve.
Nice.
But anyway, so we're doing Wild Quest, and you and I were discussing, how do I bother bringing in those uncomfortable subject matters, or do I just steer clear of them completely?
Right.
Well, apparently I'm not the only one wrestling with that conundrum, because Wizards of the Coast ran afoul.
Yeah, they did with Spelljammer, right?
Yes, with the Hadozi.
Right. I read a little bit about that.
Now these were originally, because when I saw that these were going to be in Spelljammer, of course I thought of them as from Star Frontiers, when they were the Azirian. Did you ever play Star Frontiers back in the day?
Ages ago. I think I had an amoeba dude or something like that.
The Azirian were my favorite race to play. I loved it. I mean, they're basically a simian type race with flying squirrel wings type of thing. Very cool. So, but they've been added, and I'm not sure when they were added into Dungeons and Dragons with the name Hadozi, but it was I think it was some sort of supplement, maybe well, maybe I think second edition they may have been, from what I gather from the research that I've done. Now, when they in Spelljammer, I guess they introduced them as the first Hadozis were timid mammals, no bigger than house cats, hunted by larger natural predators. The Hadozis took to the trees and evolved wing-like flaps to enable them to glide from branch to branch. And then it tells about how a wizard trapped and basically enslaved these creatures with the intent of selling them to the highest bidder. And eventually the wizard's apprentices befriended the Hadozi and freed them. So they had slavery, and they got a lot of backlash about this. You know, of course,
it seems like an obvious red flag.
Yeah, like they were lazy about putting it together. I think. I mean, in the time that we live now, that is a, like you say, a red flag. But also, that's just kind of basically lazy writing.
It feels like most projects, especially ones from large corporations. When I do a lot of graphic novels for educational organizations and universities, almost always is a sensitivity reader, someone who will read it and look at it from purposes of, is this being thoughtful? And that seems thoughtless. It seems not that it's bad, not that it was, necessarily an evil action or like a malicious action,
right? But
it's just an inconsiderate one. And I don't inconsiderate meaning they didn't consider it. And I think if you just give it a second look or take a step back at all for a moment, you're using this kind of idea, a very basic, boring kind of concept. I mean, I don't know if they ever explain, how humans evolved in their world, and that there were, that they were once in trees and they were, they
is creationism or evolution.
So why would you? The idea that you'd even have a backstory that goes to the point of evolution and then introducing magic, and then anyway, it seems like a lot of layering for. I don't know how Klingons evolved. Don't care. I don't know how the Ferengi came to be. Don't care. I don't need to see the genetic history of the Romulans to give a damn. So anyway, it's weird. And I can see why. I can see why some people. I mean, there's a whole community of people who just want to be offended, who are looking to be offended, who want to scold people, and there's a scolding currency. There's a scolding economy, and but the idea that they owned it is pretty good. I mean,
they came out with a press release that said, we recognize that some of the legacy content available to the website does not reflect the values of Dungeons & Dragons franchise today. Some older content may reflect ethnic, racial, and gender prejudice that was commonplace in American society at that time. So, they said these depictions were wrong then and they're wrong today. This content presented was originally created because to do so otherwise the same as claiming these prejudices never existed. Dungeons & Dragons teaches diversity as a strength, and we strive to make our D&D products welcoming and inclusive as possible. This part of our work will never end. And of course, they're going to take it out of they've already removed it from the digital editions. Any future printings will have it removed.
So what's weird is that I think someone easily said that they're apologizing for this legacy stuff that they came up with 6 months ago, and it's not like you're saying, it wasn't part of the it wasn't part of Star Frontiers.
No, not at all.
So there's no legacy there that they're really. So they're pointing fingers at those people back then.
Yeah, and I mean, to an extent, some stuff such as slavery makes a good evil element. I mean, it's an evil thing. Should it never be used in stories ever? I don't.
No, I think you do so if you're. Everything is okay as long as you're willing to pay the price. I think if you're going to have that element, you have to know that that it's fraught with peril. It has to be handled extremely well, and you're walking a tightrope. So again, it's one of these things where it's people say, you can say anything you want as long as you're willing to pay the price. No one's ever said that you can't say whatever you want, but you have to own what you say. So they've owned what they said. They're doing it kind of in a cowardly corporate I take full responsibility for the thing those people did. Whoever those people were, we will not name them. It's kind of cowardly. But I think as long as people own it, it's not a problem. You can do it, but just if you get called on it, you get called on it.
Right. I mean, let's look at Thanos and the Marvel movies. He essentially committed genocide.
Sure.
But since they weren't killed, they were just removed. They worked around it, I think.
I think they were also careful about making it otherworldly. I think as long as it is truly alien, you give yourself some cover. When I was doing I did some educational comics, and they were for math graphic novels. And the previous versions that
I can't wait to find out how genocide works in the arithmetic. But go on.
Well, I kind of have my story starts off. Okay, so the original graphic novels that they had done was stuff like David goes into a CD store and he has $10. He wants to buy a CD. The discount CDs are $5 a piece. How many CDs can he buy? And the first question every kid will have is, what's a CD? Right? So it's like the things age so poorly and so quickly that the case when I was working on this project was, let's make it otherworldly. Let's make it sci-fi. If you have to blow open a number of gates to infiltrate an alien compound and you only have X amount of explosives, blah, blah, blah. Basically, the kids it's video game math and it's not real world math, but it's still math. But the story starts with the comics were called The Remainders. It was this team of people who were late for this galactic conclave, and when they get there, the conclave has been destroyed. Now, you could say that was like a 9/11 thing that happened. You could if you look at it through that lens, but if you put it in space, if you do some things that truly make an alien, it's like people have issues with the drow. If the drow or dro, if they're blue, if they're a dark blue, suddenly it's like not a thing anymore. It's more like you just have to make things. If you can have all the politics of the real world if you distance it enough so people don't think you're saying stuff about the real world, because everything's going to be informed by all the experience and all the history and everything we have. And yes, history's taught us a lot of lessons. It'd be great to be able to apply those to the future in a way that people don't think they're learning, but you have to do it in a way that just disconnects it from reality. It's like a long time ago, far, far away. Make it so that it's crazy. But I feel like what they did with the Hidozi was that was still the trappings. There were enough trappings there with enough, especially when you get into cartoon artwork and cartoonish illustration and the stereotypical illustration that people, that laced cartooning not that long ago.
Right.
When you have all that stuff, and then the cartoonish traditions and the cartoonish vaudevillian traditions, with all that stuff still lingering and still raw for a lot of people, if you don't catch yourself doing that and someone else catches you doing that, so again, I think you could do it, but you just have to. Had those been robots, would anyone care? We don't like your kind in here. They said it to droids and no one was like, hey, what are you doing there? You know what I mean? It was like, as soon as you, anyway, I think as writers, as creators, there's enough, especially in worlds of fantasy and sci-fi, that there's enough room for us to be creative. So that if you want to use these heavier things, the baggage of these things, but then there's other ham-handed ways, like, Star Trek, what's the one with Tom Hardy as the Picard clone?
Nemesis. Awful
assault on Deanna Troi. Awful, absolutely awful. Ham-handedly done, poorly done. But I feel like there's a billion ways you could have done that better. And I feel like with this Hidozi thing, a billion ways they could have done it better. And that's really what they're apologizing for. We could do better, and we should have.
Hmm.
So anyway, I'm rambling. I'm rambling.
No,
Sorry.
no, and that's exactly why I brought it up. I mean, I'm because I want to bring things, of the Western culture, and by that I don't mean, the place, but just as far as the genre goes,
Right.
and that is laced with problematic material. There's
Right.
no getting around it, but it has a definite, you know, flavor to it.
Right.
So I've got to figure, it would be wrong for me to just, have, the Native Americans, for lack of a better word right now, the natives, even just saying the natives sounds wrong coming off my tongue.
Sure. Sure. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why we're challenging to ever do like Martian Chronicles, because of the very clear analogies that Bradbury was making. And I think the Critical Role changed their introduction very early on. They had a whole season 3 had a very different opening filmed sequence where they're all doing like
Exploring
kind
the
of the
Far East or something, right?
yeah, the explorer trope.
Yeah.
And they backed away from that. Now they have this sort of watercolor thing going on. I feel like in that case, it was another case of them stepping on insensitivity, because they were just playing dress up and they weren't thinking it through. Um, and then they did the right thing; they changed it. So I don't think they're going to go back and alter their archive, but
No.
but changing it up was probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, and Dungeons and Dragons as a whole has accepted such an inclusiveness,
Right.
that there's going to be, problematic scenarios and situations and material like that, the Hedozis and the Critical Role opening and whatever, are going to be called out more often.
And I know both of those organizations. I know people are like, you're going to go defend Hasbro. It's like, not defending Hasbro. It's like it's clear that they're the people who seem to be in charge, and certainly with Critical Role, are attempting to do everything they can to be as inclusive and as thoughtful as they can be. And they felt like they did it wrong. And did they lose some people from that? Maybe. But I also think that Critical Role has a track record of inclusivity and generosity and thoughtfulness. And I think that's something as well that people go, oh, is that a double standard? I'm like, no. I mean, I think people were cutting Miss Rowling a lot of slack for the longest, for as long as they could, and at some point, like she just keeps, she's just losing fans every day.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like all of us who are creating, especially people who are unknown creators, we don't have some sort of legacy we can point out of here's our great track record of being great people. If we're unknown, it's sort of like the first thing people will ever hear about you would be that here's the huge mistake they made. Or they won't count. It doesn't even count. Here's the horrible thing they did. Not the mistake they made. It's categorized far worse. So I'd just say, tread lightly and figure out ways to make it so that, not to the point where you shaved off every rough edge so you become a Olympics mascot where you're now this inert, the Greendale human beings. You're not the kind of generic, bland, amorphous globs, although Star Frontiers allows that. I think there's a way. Had the globs been given the backstory of the Hidozi, not a problem.
Probably not so much. Yeah.
So I don't know. Tread lightly and be thoughtful and think, what's the worst way that this could be interpreted? Because that's how it will be interpreted.
Right. And then on the
Not
other
by
hand,
everybody, but some people will. Someone's gonna have a bad day. They're in a bad frame of mind. They've been wronged 50 times before breakfast. They sit down at Twitter, they open up the thing and they see the thing you did, and they're gonna see it in the worst way possible. And just, not that they're bad people, just that that's the frame of mind that they're in,
Right. No, and then on the other hand, the Catacombs and Comedians that I do at live shows, there is definitely stuff that a sensitivity reader would vet the fuck out of the show.
Sure.
But that's stand-up comedy. That's a show. That's a whole different,
right,
realm. And so,
well, you put a disclaimer at the front too. You say this is not for kids. This is
Yeah,
you know.
just there's the adult language.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't. I'm not, by no means am I defending anybody that create. I'm like I would never defend J.K. Rowling's, but you know, it is a slippery slope as far as using uncomfortable material in creativity, and that's something we will continue to explore. I think what I want to do is try to see if we can't get a sensitivity reader specifically for role playing games to join us
That'd be great.
and talk about this sort of stuff, because it's definitely worth talking about. Because I don't, you know, again, I don't believe everything should be homogenized to, you know, not offend anybody, because you can't have evil without evil being offensive. But you know, it's definitely worth exploring as Dungeons and Dragons goes into its 1 D&D or 6th edition or whatever they're calling it, and you know, role playing games continue to grow and expand in different ways.
Well, I think you nailed it by saying if people want to handle uncomfortable things, they just have to know they're going to make people uncomfortable. And if you don't mind losing that audience of people who've made uncomfortable, it just seems to be, as someone who's trying to create something inclusive and trying to get as many, who's desperate for as many people to read my stuff and buy my stuff as possible, I have to.
I mean,
I owe it to myself to be better.
If I wanted to set a campaign world that has, you know, horrible rape and pillage and slavery just because, you know, it's stuff that has happened in the past, genocide, whatever, I got to come out, and I'm not saying I'm working on anything like this. Any creator who's doing this sort of thing, they need to come out at the very beginning and say, we deal with ugly, horrible subject matter, and we don't have a legacy to blame it on because we're creating this firsthand.
Right.
But it is something, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people put a content warning up. And I think that's probably that's a legitimate thing to do. Some people put it up for things that I think would never have occurred to me, but there's some people out there who, you know, that does help with some folks, because
but it's also not a free ticket get out of jail card. You know, just because I put a disclaimer up, I'm going to make, you know, I'm going to have these horrible subject, you know.
No, but I do think there's a certain amount where you're able to say that this is a live comedy club. This is all done improvisationally. Mistakes are made, you know, on a live stage. A slip of the tongue shouldn't condemn somebody to social media oblivion. But for the most part, all of this, if I didn't have Twitter, I wouldn't even know about the Hadozi thing. I would just be playing D&D. So I've got some friends who are just not on Twitter, not because they're not trying to be rebellious. They're just bored of the whole thing, and they don't understand. They frankly are they go, I don't understand this. Why would I spend time on this thing?
Yeah. That's why I'm not on TikTok. I have no idea how that works. And look at the gray hair.
Well, yeah, that's it too. It's part of it's like, you know, being cis, hetero, allosexual, white, middle-aged dude.
Maybe that's the guilt I'm feeling.
Well, but it's more like, you know, am I the right person to make a judgment about a thing? You know, you'd see that's what Critical Role did with their opening credits. First of all, I thought that just technically speaking, I thought the idea of their concept was that you're going to zoom in on a playmat, and then, these are the characters running around the playmat. That's the segue was never made. I felt like that transition was never established from a storytelling point of view in terms of the opening credits. But then the idea that they were wearing they should have been wearing fantasy garb. I don't know why they weren't wearing leather armor and chainmail. To be doing stuff Indiana Jones style seemed to be very I don't know, it incongruous with what they do, with the genre that they're in. Anyway, I'm rambling.
Yeah, and again, this is a subject matter that we will continue to explore more and more. Real quick check before we leave. You're still at $7,109.
I haven't lost anybody. Woohoo!
You haven't gained anybody. 307 backers.
No. I don't. Gaining. I'm not as interested. I could tell you behind the scenes here how that Facebook. We talked about. I was running Facebook ads and how they're doing. I'm getting $5 a day. haven't seen a bill from them in a couple of days. It means I'm probably gonna get a bill for way too much money. Um, Looking at the back end of Intoximancy, the dashboard, I'll tell you how that's doing. Dashboard. Facebook, 25 pledges, $700. So 9% based on ads having run. And I don't know the total amount of ads, but I bet by the end of it, maybe $100 if I ran it for 20 days.
Okay.
I don't think I've run it that long, but by the end of the campaign, it might be $75, $80. So thumbs up for Facebook ads for TTRPG stuff.
All right. And do those run on Instagram as well?
No.
No?
No.
Because they're the same company. You can do that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And their back end scolds me for not running it on, Marketplace and all the other places. I'm only running it on the main feed and in the upper right corner, and maybe one other place. But I don't want Instagram. I don't think people are doing this with Instagram. That stuff's zipping by so fast. I don't think my little picture is going to get any attention. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, put a puppy in there and they'll stop.
But to me, Instagram is not where I go for that stuff. And plus people say, hey, Facebook's, for the olds. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. No,
People my age.
I hear you. I'm on Facebook more than I like to admit, but I don't have I'm on Facebook only for role-playing games and, the computer games that I play, and that's about it. So,
are there any good Facebook RPG groups?
As far as D&D goes,
yeah.
You know what? There's so much noise to sound ratio. I'll jump on one and follow it for a while, but then I'm like muting.
Yeah. That's how I feel. I haven't found one that really feels like a good community.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got a good one that's Nashville Central that I like. But yeah, I'll go on there and hang out for a little while. But there's generally there's one called Game Dump Zero, which I like because it's small, and I think that's what you got to do. You just can't jump on one that says Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition because it's
spam.
And it's not necessarily that. It's just the same old people complaining how they make the rules too inclusive, and the same new people saying how the rules are too exclusive. So,
right.
And it's just blah 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 blah. And,
right.
But anyway, that's why we have this little talk show for you and I to talk to each other about this sort of stuff without.
We have it all figured out. That's what's so great.
That's what we're working on. So yeah, so next week Steve won't be with me. I'll have another Steve with me. So the show.
I will be at the Daytona Beach Comic Book Convention on Saturday and Sunday. It is in DeLand. It's just outside of Daytona. They have a nice facility there, but it's pretty close to Daytona. It's my local show. It's like a 10-minute drive. I love it. It's a nice big event. There's gonna be a lot of cartoonists there. Should be a lot of fun. I wish I could stream from there, but in 2 weeks I'll give everyone a report.
Okay, and then so that will be on the 20. Wait, let's look at the calendar real quick.
Sure. I think it's the 18th.
18th,
we'll be together.
On the 18th, we'll get a complete rundown of that. And then again, we will not be broadcasting on the 25th because you have a convention to go to.
Savannah Comic-Con.
Yeah, and I have other things to go to, like mainly a Titans football game.
Perfect. and my Kickstarter ends Thursday night East Coast time at 10 p.m. So if anyone wants to check it out or follow along or follow the drama, the ebbs and flows of it, 10 p.m. on Thursday, and I'll be streaming here on Twitch, twitch.tv/Steve Conley.
And we will have a complete recap on how that went for you on the 18th, I guess.
Yeah, and my plan is that as soon as the campaign is over, I'm going to be uploading the subclass material for playtesting onto my Discord, so that people can see it. What the playtesting part of it. So it includes basically one spell that gets included when you level up in the class, the flagon rules, and then the stuff that will follow after that will be like the pipeweed variant and all that stuff. But I basically want to give the guts of it. like you talked about not wanting to share too much while the campaign is live, but as soon as the campaign is over, as soon as the doors are closed, you're all trapped with me. Then I'll share that stuff.
And I've got Oddity off print material should be start popping out in about a week's time or so as well. So I'm still waiting on all the money to get into my account, but
Sure.
Yeah, but that's just the name of the nature of the game. All right, so again, check out the Steve Conley for all Steve Conley goodness stuff on Twitter and such. I'm at Dan Leon Taylor on Twitter as well. And also, please tell everybody about Zero Level Media and have them follow the Twitch account, because we're going to have the streaming Catacombs and Comedians streaming show relatively soon, as well as the Wild Quest I've been talking about. And again, we're going to turn this whole into a D&D tabletop role-playing game media conglomerate.
Empire.
That's the word I'm looking for. Thanks, Thesaurus. All right, Steve. Nice chatting with you. I'll see you
Thanks,
in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.